Hi, everyone. Welcome to Badass Women at Any Age. This is your host, Bonnie Marcus. What does it look like to own your ambition and talent? What does it look like to be a badass woman? My guest today, Bianca Best, is a shining example, and her story will inspire you to explore new avenues for creativity and take charge of your career. Bianca is a woman of impact. She's an award-winning global business leader, author, certified success strategist, entrepreneur, speaker, and single mother of 4. Bianca describes her CV as a chronology of passions explored and includes a decade as a techpreneur running the bespoke gift company, which pioneered the personalized gift industry forever. A decade of corporate ascendancy, running vast digital divisions of the world's largest comms conglomerates, to certifying in healing modalities from hypnotherapy to executive coaching, to her international impact inspiring the working world through her keynotes, workshops in organizations like Google and Amazon. Her organization, Bianca Best, is dedicated to infusing the working world with graceful productivity, kind leadership, and unlocked human potential, whereby individuals and organizations flourish without burnout. Bianca, welcome to Badass Women.
Thank you so much for having me. Goodness me, hearing you read all of that out loud.
I know.
I've been biffed.
I mean, you've had an amazing career so far. And how does it feel to hear somebody else say it all?
Well, yeah, it's funny sitting here retrospectively thinking, wow, I did do that.
Mm.
But I think because I feel I'm a perpetual student of life. I mean, we all are. I feel I'm at the beginning of a new chapter again right now. So it's by no means complete. So it feels like I've come a long way and there's still a long way to go.
Right. And my goal for my own life is never to be done, really.
Yeah, exactly.
So fill us in here, Bianca. You've had this incredible career. You've explored all these different things. How did you arrive where you are today? I mean, what's your personal story?
Well, thank you for asking and thank you for having me. I mean, it's a long story, I suppose, because I'm 50 years old and it includes so many different undulations, but I have never not been ambitious. I think that's a good place to start. I have always leaned into pursuing what has excited me and followed the potential opportunities, even if I felt a bit scared. But I think in my early 20s, as I started seizing life and seizing opportunities, life kept expanding. I left school and hopped onto a corporate ladder, following my interests in advertising and creativity and publishing, and very quickly realized I was quite adept at writing and started a freelance writing career. And then I got married relatively young in today's standards. I was 27 and fell pregnant with my first child very quickly after getting married. So suddenly I found myself in a very different realm of juggling ambition with motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
And became quite inspired by the idea of launching the bespoke gift company totally by accident, and found myself as an entrepreneur in my late 20s with 2 young children, with a business that then grew and grew exponentially.
What was the accident? How did it happen?
The accident was, I realized it was my then husband and I, it was our 10-year anniversary. And I'd just given birth to our daughter, our second child. So I had an 18-month-old toddler, our little baby girl, and I'm sitting there breastfeeding, just hair unwashed, everything a mess. I'm in chaos, but happy in my lovely little blissful baby moon. Suddenly remember it's our 10-year anniversary and I think, oh, I don't want to get dressed and go out and get the children in buggies and go shopping. What am I going to get him for our anniversary? So being a creative soul, and I'm sure you can relate to this, I wrote a little poem called A Decade to Remember, captured all our lovely memories, found a frame in the house and some photos, arranged it around it, and there was the gift. He came home from work. That was all very well received. I was very romantic. He was happy. We hung it on the wall, and it was there in the hallway. And everybody that came round to visit us and meet the new baby saw it hanging in the hallway and said, "Oh, where did you order that? Where can I buy that?" And my brain just started to fizz with, could this be a marketable commodity? And it really could. And this is back in, the early 2000s. So consumer confidence in online shopping was just growing. And I felt very passionate that actually everyone should have access to beautiful personalized gifts like this. Because at that point, you could go into a card shop and you might find a mug carousel with your best friend's name on it, but nothing truly unique. So I just set about working out if I could actually build a personalized gift business. And I found someone to build a website. I created a suite of 7 products that were personalized poem products. I placed an advert on something called Overture. This was pre-Google. And that advert went live. And within 20 minutes, I'd sold my first £80 luxury gift. And that was it. I was off.
Wow,
I had this...
you were on your way.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry I had to interrupt your story.
No, thank you.
That really says a lot about you.
Well, it was interesting, that whole journey, because it started with a little bit of excitement. And I think that's really quite key to life, actually. So I leaned into that. I felt encouraged by the fact that there was a sale, and I just threw heart and soul into building this business. And fast forward a year, I have now signed deals with every online gift retailer in the UK. And at that point, that was supermarkets, it was Mothercare, Pastimes, WH Smith's, all sorts of brands that you may or may not be familiar with. A lot of them are out of business now. But at that point in time, a lot of those organizations were looking for new gift ranges, new models of reaching customers. And I built a tech infrastructure that connected consumers with retailers and with my order management services, and had freelance poets, freelance designers, all just grew and grew and grew. And I'm sort of laboring this story, this part of my chapter, because it was so key for me in terms of learning about myself. I was really only quite young, and there was no model or template or mentor or anything to guide me other than my own energy, focus, and attention.
And what did you learn, Bianca?
Well, I learned that with the right energy, focus, and attention, anything you so desire is achievable. Because I would have doors slammed in my face. I'd be going into industrial units with a double buggy, asking printers to please work with me and print my products, promising them big sales. And they'd look at me and laugh and shush me out of their workshops because I was too cottage industry, was their terms. But I would keep going on and on. And if someone said no, I'd find a solution. And things just kept expanding. It was so exciting. And I was just about to launch a franchise model where I had the trade manufacturing unit, I had one retail outlet, and then I had concessions in large department stores in the UK. I was about to franchise it, and I found out I was pregnant again. And this time it was twins.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. So suddenly I had 4 children under 7 and a massively expanding business, and a husband who had very recently lost his job. So it was a very intense moment of responsibility for me. And in that moment, again, I followed my heart. And even though it was potentially financially precarious, I absolutely knew that I wanted to honor and cherish this pocket of time to be a mummy to all these little people. So I really paused all the business expansion. I left it plateauing, so it was still bringing an income in, so we had a relative amount of security, but I stopped all of the aggressive sales expansion and just focused in on family. And it's interesting when I think back on that first year when the twins were born, and I breastfed those little cherubs for 15 months. I lived in relative chaos at home. I mean, I was by no means a domestic goddess, But honestly, Bonnie, it was one of the happiest years of my entire life. And the reason I believe that was so happy and joyful was because I was living on purpose. And this is a lot of the work that I teach today. Connecting into purpose for me actually brought so much joy. So it's important always, I think, in our lives to honor our values and be aligned and on purpose with what matters most. Because for me, absolutely at that point, family mattered most. So I told you it was a long story. I hope this is all okay.
Absolutely. To the present.
Well, I sold the business after I'd come up for having settled into nurturing 4 little souls. And then I fell into corporate. And I've spent the past 13 years navigating the corporate world. And this was where you entered my life, actually, through your books and really helped me because I had no real corporate experience. And I fell into an opportunity that landed in my lap. I was going to give it a go for 3 months, working in a digital marketing agency up the road. And I just fell in love with the business environment, the corporate pace, the excitement. And I seemed to be quite naturally good at it, luckily. So I very quickly ascended up to working in large global organizations. And I was out of my depth because I didn't actually know how to play the game strategically. And I ended up in an environment which was a cutthroat business growing 30% year on year in a leadership role that I had really talked my way into, but was very brave and ready to take on the challenge, but it was brutal. And I learned a lot of very hard lessons throughout that period. And it was where I read your book and learned really how to nurture myself in a tough, very male dominated.
And how to be strategic and play the game.
Exactly.
That's what the politics of promotion is all about.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't have a strategy. I was just Mrs. Nice. I just turned up being nice and friendly, and it was a very different environment to the business that I'd been running at home. But during these 2 decades, the first of entrepreneurial and then the second in corporate, I had initially started really burning out because as I'd started leaning into responsibility and achieving my dreams and following my passions, I wasn't at any point aware of how I should self-manage. Well, not in the beginning. So I had subscribed to this myth that having it all meant doing it all. So I started slamming into wall after wall of burnout where I would collapse and be inert, useless, properly grounded. And then I would bounce back and carry on at the same pace and ridiculously disrespectful of my natural rhythms until eventually I ended up hospitalized with total immune collapse. And a doctor said to me, "You're in chronic stress. Your entire body is starting to shut down. If you don't pay attention to your natural rhythms and start healing yourself, then you're going to be unable to sustain." And it's interesting how even my reaction in that moment was, I'm not stressed. I'm fulfilling my dreams. This is my destiny. This is what I'm meant to be doing. And it took me a while for me to actually recognize, no, this isn't the right way. So
right. It's not that the dream was wrong.
No.
It's that your approach was not serving you.
Exactly that. Exactly that. Because I had lots of warped belief systems. A big example is I didn't think childcare was appropriate. I actually had a belief system that if I employed a childminder, I was failing as a mother, and because I had a
Oh boy. Oh yeah.
Literally.
You were setting yourself up for a disaster.
Exactly. But I didn't know otherwise. And so I had to do a lot of psychotherapeutic work to actually accept, actually, childminder is great if it means I can work and still be a healthy mother. So I started dabbling with how to manage myself, still achieve my dreams. And this took a 10-year period, I would say, of self-discovery and also studying the different healing modalities you mentioned in my bio at the beginning. And then probably around 2015, people started saying to me, how are you so smiley and happy and running your family and working with such success? So I started bottling it up and I started writing books, releasing programs and talking about what I was doing and what I'd learned and coaching and serving clients, and opened up my burnout clinic. And it's grown and grown. And I'm very proud to have published several books now. The recent one launched as a bestseller, which was just so wonderful. And I left the corporate world in April this year. And I'm devoting myself full time now to being an entrepreneur again and building up the business and running my family. So it's a whole new chapter again. And that's my story.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sitting here with a big smile on my face because in doing this podcast over the last few years, and we're inching up to probably 250 episodes now.
Wow.
I have learned so much from my guests. But one thing they all seem to have in common is that the challenges that we have been presented with, that we learn from, that we learn how to navigate, very often become our purpose to help others.
Absolutely agree. I absolutely agree.
And your story is a great example of that. You were driving yourself and pushing yourself to a point where you couldn't sustain it. And then you learned how to heal. And this is something that's so common with women in the workplace today, that balance of, and I write about this a lot on my Substack, which is called Own Your Ambition. How do you stay focused on your career and still not sacrifice your life, whatever that is, know?
Exactly. Because compromise in any area actually is
we feel we have to do everything. And I was a single mom, right? I got divorced. My kids were like 6 and 8. And so I climbed the corporate ladder, so to speak, with 2 young children. And it's just, and even then, because this has been a few decades ago, it was like uncommon, right? To be in that kind of a situation. But we're so hard on ourselves. I mean, I was like, oh, well, it's a birthday, in those days you could actually bring cupcakes or cookies in to school. Now you can't. But it's like, oh, I got to bake the cookies. I got to go to soccer practice. I got to meet the deadline for this meeting and this project. And we don't give ourselves a break. So I love that you're doing this important work. I have a big question for you, because I think this is probably part of your mission, is being productive, but graceful productivity. What is that all about?
Well, we are in this societal trap of frenetic productivity, and I'm sure you'll be familiar with it. And it worsened during the pandemic, where we all became locked in this fear state of trying to be overproductive to prove ourselves and to create this sense of security in terms of our income and our careers. And I mean, it was bad before. Back in 2019, the World Health Organization had actually classified burnout as a global epidemic for the first time. So that was back in 2019. Then the pandemic happened and we all got into this sort of flurry of, I'm going to lose my job, or it's chaos, or I need to work harder. And certainly in Europe, we started to hit 11-hour days for the first time as a normality. And you and your listeners will be very aware of the different tensions between hybrid working and how that's playing out universally really now. We lost those boundaries between work and home, and we just became always on. And at that point, I was in leadership roles where the workforce was contracting, and quite a lot of us, myself included, were given two jobs during the pandemic. But it never really settled back after the lockdowns. It carried on with this pace of intensity. And now with artificial intelligence changing workforces, we're seeing contraction again, but we're seeing workloads increase. So it's logical that we cannot take on more. We cannot expand our responsibilities. It's up to us to actually hone where we focus our attention, what it is that we actually focus on in terms of our remit, our core impact, and step into a place of what I call graceful productivity by becoming very, very conscious of where we're directing our attention. Because it is very easy for our attention to be stolen. And if our attention is stolen, our time is stolen. And if our time is stolen, then inevitably our energy is stolen. And it's a cascade of catastrophic negativity. So we need to be really mindful of where it is that we allocate our attention. And there's two ways we are attentive. It's either subjective or it's objective. And if we're in the realm of objective attention, it means there's the risk that our attention is being misdirected out of alignment with what we value most. So objective attention is when it's media, it's news stories, it's social feeds, it's gossip around the water cooler. It's our attention being lured in different directions that perhaps are not core to our purpose or our work remit.
Mm-hmm.
When we are subjective, we are architecting what we learn, what we consume, who we're with, how in flow we are with our work focus. And it's incredibly empowering when we become custodians of our attention. And a lot of people are unaware of this, which is interesting. It's interesting to me. The majority of clients that come to me, and probably with you, they come to me and say, I don't have enough time and energy. But when we start dissecting attention, they do.
And we don't have boundaries. We don't set really good boundaries for ourselves.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, I find that's very challenging for women because we want to be liked. We want to be all to everybody. And so we do let ourselves get distracted, as you say.
Oh, it's funny you should say that. In my latest newsletter, my Success with Grace newsletter, I actually write about the fact that I'm working on boundaries myself right now. We're perpetual students, but the thing that's bubbling right now, despite being an author and teaching all this stuff, is I have got to protect my boundaries. And so, yeah, it's a live work in progress.
It's really, you know, it's challenging because we don't place that energy on ourselves enough. You know, we're more, you know, do you agree? We're more outer directed a lot of the time.
Absolutely. And I think being a mother really just stimulates that, as well as being a woman. For me, I have teenage twin boys now. So my children are 23, 21, and twin boys that are 16 next week. And I'm going through a moment where they're clearly experimenting with their own independence and getting ready to show me.
Challenging years having been through that.
Honestly, I thought I had sussed how to manage teenagers with my big two. But going through it right now with these twin boys, my word, body, this is a new Lee. But where my instinct is to still be this nurturing, omnipresent, matriarchal force in the home where I'm trying to bring everyone together and let's do this and let's do that. I'm actually really having to realize I've got to let them go, do their own things, but protect my own boundaries. So when they come in and say, oh, we need to go to the shops and buy more milk, or you need to book me the dentist, or I want people to come around, or whatever it is, the endless demands of children at home on their summer holidays, I'm actually learning to say, no, here's a time when we are going shopping and it's Thursday evening at 6 p.m, be in the car, come with me, we'll go and get food then. Otherwise, no. And it's things like that which sound so ridiculous, but this is me learning to set boundaries and not be at the behest of my children. So I might have mastered boundary setting in the corporate environment or with my staff or with my superiors, but at home, I haven't put boundaries.
Oh, it's a whole new ball game. Oh my God.
It really is.
You also talk about kind leadership. Can you describe that? And also, what's the impact of that in the workplace?
Thank you for asking. Great questions. So, kind leadership is really about seeing each other as humans, as souls. I see too much egoic, profit centered engagement in the workplace. Of course, profit matters. Of course, we are only at work in that environment and employed by that particular employer to ensure that we are enhancing the bottom line, and it's about the P&L. But we can do so with human heart. And I have seen too much really destructive, egoic, selfish behavior in the workplace. And I just firmly believe it's unnecessary. It is absolutely possible to succeed, to motivate teams, to drive profit, to inspire growth whilst being kind. And so I'm very impassioned about celebrating more emotional intelligence, more leaders that epitomize this human kindness, because it works. And my teams have always been the teams that have been thriving and delivering and hitting the KPIs. And yet I think there are too many examples of leaders that still operate with an unkindness to the culture. And I'm so against that. And we know that when you've got positive relational energy within a workplace, everybody thrives. And there's review after Harvard study to evidence the impact
Yeah.
of that.
Now, do you see gender difference in leadership in terms of the kindness, the emotional intelligence
Yes.
you're describing?
Yes. So
Yeah.
there is innately a higher preponderance of emotional intelligence amongst women. But what I will say, and whilst a lot of the bad behavior I've seen has typically come from men, I will say that I have seen appalling behavior from nervous, insecure women in positions of power
Oh, yeah.
who, when they feel threatened, I think they can be far, far, far worse.
Queen bees. I describe them as queen bees.
Yeah, and they can be more destructive than the men.
Yeah, yeah. But I also, I'm aware of the research that's been done that leaders that do show more empathy, emotional intelligence, collaboration are more successful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's just we can't seem to let go of societal norms. We can't seem to let go of the patriarchal system,
Yeah.
right? That is more like power over rather than power to.
Exactly. It's so sad. We see it too often. And I often compare leadership to running the family and being a parent, because I think if we can manage our children, if you can manage tantruming children, then you should be able to manage different high emotionally intense moments in the workplace. I'll often share stories and analogies with colleagues who might be struggling, where when you see a leader who is misbehaving because they're angry or they're overtly assertive, they're aggressive, it comes from a place of insecurity and fear. And it's better to get into that zone of imagine that tantruming adult as a tantruming toddler. And all that person actually needs in that moment is to know that you understand and that you are on side and that there's empathy and that together, collaboratively, you'll find a solution, and it can settle heated moments. But it takes a lot of conscious awareness, and it can be exhausting.
It can be exhausting. So many people assume that since I made it to the C-suite, of a national organization, I went to business school, I did this. Well, I started my career as a kindergarten teacher. And when I think about what it's like to corral 5-year-olds, I mean, the corporate environment, and until we're having this discussion, I think I should write about this. I never thought of how being a kindergarten teacher prepared me to be successful in the workplace, and mostly in dealing with relationships and stuff. But if you can manage a classroom full of 5 and 6-year-olds,
Exactly. Because so much of that is you reading the room, trusting your intuition, and controlling them through empathy and gentleness and kindness. And
Gentle, and yet setting
yes,
boundaries.
exactly. There you
Yeah.
go. That was it. That was your empowered beginning.
That was my business school experience. What do you think is, in your opinion, for having, spent time in corporate, is the ideal kind of working environment for women?
Well, it's one where we are seen and acknowledged.
And how do we get there?
It starts at the top, and it's about eliminating leaders who don't have the EQ. Because if we don't feel seen, heard, or that we belong, and we are experiencing loneliness within that board or within that team and whatever the work culture is, if we feel lonely, we cannot perform. We will not hit our targets. We will not thrive. Loneliness is one of the, well, we know actually loneliness statistically kills more people than obesity. So that sort of soul-sucking loneliness is horrendous. So if we have leaders in organizations who work in such a way where they don't connect on a human level, they're not bringing that positive relational energy because they're expecting machine-like robotic delivery, we cannot expect cultures to thrive. And the work that I'm doing with businesses now is I'm really starting to come into the heart of teams and talk about, yes, burnout prevention, but about energy management and self-awareness to understand the dynamics of how we show up, how we deliver, and how we interrelate to others, because it has to start from within to then create this ripple effect. But if the leader at the top doesn't care about that, it's a huge problem. So it's top and bottom, and it's a massive challenge. What's your perspective on that?
I agree. And I think in practical terms, I think that managers, directors, and above need to be incentivized on some of the characteristics that you're talking about. So not just reaching certain productivity or revenue goals, but really bringing to the forefront some of the qualities that you're talking about in leadership where they would be rewarded for it. I think that could perhaps flip the switch. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the command and control, that era of, if we take the example of people being in the workplace, so you have to be in my office so I can watch your productivity, and look at how disruptive that is in terms of how people got used to a hybrid way of working. And now suddenly some organizations, namely the big tech firms, have said, no, you've got to come in and sit at your desks. I interviewed a woman on my show, the Big Impact show recently, this inspiring leader who left corporate, set up her own digital marketing agency. It's hugely successful, a global business. She has 39 members of staff, and she's built this business up over 15 years now. And not one member of staff has ever left her. She has zero churn, and she doesn't have a headquarters. They are 100% remote, but they are so beautifully connected because she's so human, and she has that X factor of the positive relational energy that she's able to keep the momentum. They are winning business, they're growing, winning awards. And she's exemplifying how it is possible to build a team just around kindness and nurturing. So my
question for you, Bianca. Can we learn these skills, or, are they part of our personality anyway?
Well, it's nature, nurture. And actually, I write about this in my book. There's an aspect of self-awareness for each and every one of us that contributes to our growth. So if we want to grow, and if we're a leader and we want to grow our business, then it's incredibly important to start expanding our own emotional intelligence. But yes, it can be learned through, just like intuition can be learned. It's a muscle. The more we give attention and focus to a psychodynamic aspect, we can expand it. So, yeah, I think it needs to be taught. And it's certainly what I'm trying to bring into the organizations that I work without being critical, because nobody wants to be judged and put in a bucket that says you've got low EQ. So it's a gentle self-awareness of your work and your life is going to be better if you really try and harness this.
And you'll feel better about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Because you'll feel happier,
being
because
that kind of
people
leader.
respond more positively to you, and the work will be easier and probably more fun.
Yeah. Well, Bianca, this has really been wonderful. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for being on Badass Women.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and wonderful to chat to you, one of my heroes. So thank you.
So how can my listeners learn more about you, your work, your books?
Thank you. Thank you so much. So my website is biancabest.com. And my latest book, Big Impact Without Burnout, is available now everywhere books are sold. And there's a special offer at the moment on my website. So please sign up to my Success with Grace newsletter, and I'll inspire you with ways that I really am intent on transforming the way we work. So there's more Success with Grace.
I love it. And Bianca, you definitely walk the walk.
Oh, bless you. Thank you. Well, after you.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. If you like the show, please rate and review and subscribe to Badass Women. Share it with your friends. So I'd like you to reflect and think about what is your ideal work environment. I mean, what about relationships? And are you settling? Are you stuck out of fear to move on and try something new? Changing companies and leaving dead-end jobs or toxic environments doesn't show weakness. It's owning who you are and honoring that. And that's badass. Till next time, be bold and be your badass self.